right, how's it going, everybody? We've got another Inside Star Citizen this week. I'm going to go ahead and check out this one. Sounds like it's going to focus on the cargo refactor and, what's the other one? The Rastar tool for base building and making points of interest in Star Citizen. I'd like to temper my expectations. We've been waiting a lot to hear about the cargo refactor. Now that it's finally here being shown to us, I'd like to take a step back and remind myself this is just the physicalization of cargo. What we're really looking to understand here is what the rest. I feel like they're only now planning tier 1 of the cargo refactor. We just saw in the monthly report, so I don't know if we're going to actually get the details on what they're planning to do with this, but let's see what they have to say about this first physicalization.
We're moving away from the simplistic implementation that we had before into something that's more of a real simulation.
So right straight from the start, this is an interesting point to me. If you go on the progress tracker, you'll see the cargo refactor and you will see commodity kiosks, 2 different deliverables, 2 different tasks. Commodity factors talks about physicalizing cargo. Kiosks talk about updating to building blocks and showing timers for your cargo. Now, I believe those are both coming at the same time. What I don't know is if the commodity kiosks, sorry about that, are considered a part of the cargo refactor, if we should consider cargo refactors to always have to do with the commodity kiosks, or if those are being updated separately. I don't know. But here's the new kiosk, shows demand. It shows the SCU of the cargo grid. Right now it's got a placeholder ship in the middle because that's eventually going to be showing off your actual visual representation of your ship's cargo grid. They don't have that yet. It's also going to be interesting to figure out if demand and supply actually matter in the gameplay upcoming with this change, or if they're just using that to replace the idea of buy and sell, which I still see sell over here. So I don't know. Confusing, but it's been like 3 seconds. Let's see what they have to say.
With the new physicalized cargo, it opens doors for us to give some new gameplay. Cargo today is pretty basic. You go to a kiosk, you use an interface, you load your ship, it automatically loads. Get in that ship, you drive that ship to a port, and then you sell what you bought. But there's not a lot of interesting choices there.
I gotta say, when thinking about B-roll for my own videos and thinking about all the shots I have to get, I'm actually impressed by how many different shots they get for these videos in-game. Instead of just like setting up some animation. I guess that'd take more work, but they get a lot of really unique shots in this. Thank you for the B-roll.
With the current implementation, whenever we designed it, we did not have the tractor beams that we have now. What that meant is that you were not able to pick up and manipulate the larger 1 SU boxes. At the time, all that you could do was pick up the smaller 1/8 SU boxes. But this gave us a problem for piracy and looting in general, in that the really valuable things are sold and bought in these 1 SU boxes and higher volumes, but the only thing the player can actually pick up are the smaller ones. So what we had to do is a kind of hack in the cargo system such that when a vehicle explodes, instead of generating the larger 1S,
just imagine the grunt birthday party sound. Yay! Just boxes going everywhere.
Boxes on destruction. It actually generates the smaller ones in this kind of gamey, magical way.
Oh my gosh.
So that the player can actually go pick up some of the boxes from.
Can that actually happen? Never seen that happen in the game. I guess it's existing live gameplay, so obviously it happens with the whole with the changes they made earlier. But I've never seen it rain down onto the ground like that. That's cool.
The destruction.
All right, let me give you an example. The C2 has 696 SCU, which equates to 5,568 1/8 SCU boxes that you have to loot.
Oh my gosh.
But the ship exploding should damage some of those boxes. And we want to have about 40 to 50% survive that explosion. So that's still about 2,000 1/8 SCU boxes.
But then there's server performance issues to consider. So what we've actually been doing is capping that at 10% boxes being generated. However, on top of that, it's an incredibly tedious experience, because now that's, if you were to do the math, about 400 boxes that you have.
Yo, but like being able to see something like that actually is pretty cool. I want to see that happening in a live game and see the game stack up in terms of performance, because that'd be impressive. 10% seems reasonable, though. Honestly, I think they should be really pushing to make sure that people don't try to blow up ships and try to board and steal from them instead. I could see them giving us a yield of less than 50% if we blow up a ship. I mean, it's just like the more, I guess there's going to take a lot of balancing, but the more they can do to push us towards preserving ships and disabling them instead, I think the better for overall everyone's feeling of safety. And you kind of want some feeling of safety.
To go pick up and collecting all of those by hand without a tractor beam.
With the new system, we've gotten rid of the 1/8 SCU cargo containers. Everything is 1 SCU cargo containers. So
they've completely removed 1/8.
In the case of the C2 with the 696 SCU, that would be 696 1 SCU boxes rather than 5,000 plus.
Every single one of those boxes is a real entity in the game, like any other entity in the game. It is tracked in the database as a persistent entity now that we have the new persistent entity streaming.
That's in game? Is this on a one client run or something?
Architecture. And it means that now that they're entities that are persistent, they can be interactable. So now you can do things like use the tractor beams to pull them out of the cargo hold or put them into a cargo hold. It also means that whenever we do ship destruction,
I didn't see any snapping.
New system, we don't have to generate anything. Instead, all that we do is we take the entities that were already created and we just simply detach them from the cargo hold and let them float in space. Now, we still want to have some of that explosive destruction. So there's a certain amount of variable amount of that cargo that is destroyed on ship destruction.
Actually giving you back somewhere, it's actually 0 to 90%.
Wow.
But
that's a lot more.
Calculated every time your ship explodes. So what happens then is now we're actually hitting that 40 to 50% number on average.
This means that both for players that want to reclaim the cargo that they lost.
So there's a chance that you're going to lose a lot of it, which is good enough, probably.
On ship destruction, or for pirates that want to scoop up their ill-gotten gains, then they'll have an easier time to get at it, and there'll be more value there when they try to do so.
There is also the new commodity kiosk flow, which is a step in the right direction for helping you understand what you're buying and what you're selling and what's available at the places where you buy and sell commodities. It's new UI. It's the new build.
Still a rough UI. It looks much better, but still definitely could use some polish. I guess this is tier 1, first version of building blocks version.
Building block UI, so it should be a lot easier to understand and gives you a graphical representation as you're buying and selling of how much space that you have on the ship that you're buying and selling into. 3.18 is not the end of the cargo refactor. There's lots of stuff that we're in the design process for right now, including manual loading and unloading, as well as automatic loading and unloading. We're also looking at some big box cargo missions that separate the cargo from the hauling professions. So that's something to look forward to. We have a lot more content coming that use these new features. We hope you enjoy it in 3.18.
Okay, so we didn't get any mention of the timers on cargo or the snapping to the grid, which is weird. We'll have to keep an eye out and see if those two things are actually going to be happening. The snapping to the grid seems pretty dang important, but I didn't see that really described or demonstrated here.
And as a coda to all of that, Chris Roberts actually came by my desk the other day, and we talked a bit how it was unfortunate that we even have to allow players to lose 40 to 50% of the cargo. And we talked and decided that we would try to come up with an interim solution on our path to physicalized damage that would allow us to leave the husks of ships behind on vehicle destruction instead of just exploding them and erasing all the contents.
Well,
this would allow players to explore the ships.
Wasn't this I thought this was a given.
And find the cargo and physically move it off the husks of the ships, rather than just generating a percentage of the boxes on destruction.
I thought that was like a given with the whole salvage profession coming in. Ships were just going to stick around and boxes would be inside of them. But good to hear that that's something they're specifically calling out. I do believe that we should be losing cargo on destruction, but maybe that's something that they can do once we have the ability to not destroy ships, since that's the only option right now.
Like every other aspect of Star Citizen's continuing development, the cargo refactor isn't a one drop and it's done kind of feature. And the first implementation, much like persistent entity streaming alongside it in the upcoming Alpha 3.18, is about rebuilding existing functionality within an entirely new foundation that will now set the stage for the persistent universe to reach its fullest potential in subsequent patches to come. And while we're here talking about new technologies designed to be built upon from one patch to the next, let's chat us up some Rastar, the internal tool that we've been developing now that's currently in
This is a big deal.
placing outposts throughout both the Stanton
This is a huge deal.
and systems.
This tool is going to help us a lot in the
The
future.
whole purpose of Rastar is to make the thing easier for the devs to place location at the surface of a planet. And in the end, it will be used as the system for player to build their bases.
I recognize this
We
guy.
have Rastar because the previous system based on prefab was quite hard to use and not up to scale for the scale and the scope we want for our planet density. Any changes to the planetary generation, like for example, you just change a canyon, you add a canyon to the planet, you'll have to redrop every modules at the surface of a planet to be sure they are well aligned with the new terrain and the new modification.
So this is one of those things in the past few years where people would ask questions about why aren't there more places to go? Why aren't there more things happening? And specifically when it comes to the bases, the Planet Tech team was always finishing up Planet Tech, so they would have to reset the planets every single quarter. That was a big reason why they weren't really focusing on building stuff into the planets. Now that they've actually got sorry, my headphones are dying. Now that they've actually got these planets into a more finished state and they're more confident about how they can generate them, they've built this Rastar tool up so that they can finally start putting points of interest down really easily, which I love. It's good to see them speeding up in content.
Of the terrain. Rastar makes that better by allowing, first of all, the ability to directly follow the modification of
Oh, this
terrain
looks much better
topology,
than last year.
so we don't have to refresh anything. Plus, it gives us more granularity and modularity of the locations. Backers should be caring about Rastar and all these improvements because that's the way we will be able to give you, the players, the most dense area we can imagine to keep in line and have all the planets, all the moons filled with POI and things to do on the surface.
A lot of different
And
styles,
maybe
which is
later
nice.
in orbit of these planets and moons.
Space
Citizen Con
stations.
2951. It changed.
So they're going to use the Rastar tool for space stations, which is interesting because we've seen them using the Houdini tool inside of Mighty Bridge for space stations. I wonder how those two things are going to meld.
Not much in terms of visual, mostly UI rework, but features are all there. Just a lot of internal work to allow the new build location to fit more and be more productive. So now we can have modules and elements that are nested and indented so we better understand what depends on what. And we also added the ability to collapse parts of the tool. So
The cool thing is, it looks like on their list here, they've got colonialism, they've got derelicts, they've got caves, they've got other derelicts, they've got derelict outposts. This is not just outposts. They're going to be able to combine stuff. Like, this is completely different than what they were doing in Stanton, where they would be like, okay, we're going to bring in a cave update. We're going to plop down 13 caves across planets. There you go. Now they can be like, okay, we're bringing in a location update. This is a city. This is a new town that was built next to a cave because it's got a lot of mining materials, and combine those two locations and make them work together. Have little missions maybe that you could get at the town that take you down into the cave. That's really far in the future kind of stuff, like a couple of years maybe. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm not the person who decides that. That's theoretical. That's all theory crafting. But like, that is where we start to move with this. We don't have to deal with such simplistic setups anymore.
to have a better understanding and more focused work on some parts of the tool. We also worked on better tools integration, so now we are able to use the base tools of the editor, such as gizmos or roll-up bar, to modify some elements of Rastar, which was not possible previously due to some breaking while doing so, and
It's a solid place for a turret.
consistency with the Rastar flow. But with that changes now, most of the in-edited tools are usable with raster without any risk. We also moved the object containers used for raster to streaming object containers to keep in line with the whole streaming process of the network system. So now we gave the ability for the server to load and spawn and despawn some locations and elements at will to avoid crowding the whole server memory. And we also now converted the whole connector system that was presented during the last CitizenCon to item ports. So now, again, to keep in line with the in-house way we do things and to better integrate some elements such as the resource network that will later be available on the locations. I'm quite happy with the result of raster. There is quite some work to do on it, but the result is promising. And
Oh, this is the first time we've seen those cooling towers. Yo, those are assets that we haven't seen in years, like a long time. This was something that we saw in the original kind of first sketches and like 3D models that they made for Colonialism Outposts. One of the things that had interactive points, in fact, if I'm editing this, I'll try to drop the video clip on top of whatever I'm saying now. I did not expect to see these sort of factory kind of more industrial looking small structures. This is good stuff because this is going to have work involved. This is going to have jobs involved, refinery jobs, stuff like that. And it's also featured on the Rangers concept art. And then I always loved that shot with the factories in the distance.
And I'm pretty sure you're gonna love the location we will roll out with raster.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that the cargo refactor will physicalize the manner in which we transport goods in such a way that makes retrieval after disaster, or collection after piracy, easier and more rewarding than ever before. That it's the new foundation for an entirely new trade experience that will continue to develop over subsequent patches. That it may yet have some fortunate side effects on vehicle destruction, ship husks, and salvage in the not-too-distant future. And that the Rastar tool, first introduced at last year's CitizenCon, is already being used to populate the planets of Pyro in next year's 4.0 and Stanton in this December's upcoming Alpha 318. Now don't forget that this year's intergalactic Stanton is already being used to populate that the Rastar tool, first introduced at last year's CitizenCon, is already being used to populate the planets of Pyro in next year's 4.0 and Stanton in this December's upcoming Alpha 3.
I wonder if they're just using it for the derelicts that we already know about in 318, or if he's kind of letting us on that there's going to be some bigger updates with locations in 318.
Now don't forget that this year's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo is right around the corner. You can go to the robertspaceindustrials.com website to find out all the details. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all here next week.
Okay. Couple things I was hoping that we would get to find out in this episode. One, well, like I said, the timers. The timers are something that were included on the commodity kiosk progress tracker deliverable, and they did not mention it today, even though they did show us the kiosk. They showed us the kiosk without showing us the timers, which makes me think that's not going to happen. Loading and unloading of cargo will be direct and immediate as it is already. I'm also thinking that we're probably not actually going to see anything that has to do with supply and demand. Those are just placeholders. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see that happening and them not saying something about it. The other thing is, obviously, as they've confirmed, this is a very lightweight beginning. This is a refactor of the system, cargo refactor, and they've basically set the baseline for how cargo works in the game. Again, maybe something you'd expect in the first few years of development, but clearly the engine took a lot of work to get to an actual place where they could start doing this stuff, and they had a couple missteps. Second, for Rastar, I was definitely hoping they were going to show us a little bit more about how this works with things outside of these bases. Maybe mention how this might work with the AI who would be involved with this. Obviously, AI are replaced by other teams, but can this tool eventually include the AI when you plant a location, or are they going to have to do that separately? Another thing, Could this run like the river tool that they've recently gotten to load in multiple locations on a planet? Could they eventually get to the point where Rastar says, hey, I see this planet, I see 12 locations that feel reasonable for ground locations, I'm going to plant those specifically on the planet, and then the artists can come in and finish them later. That would be huge, and that would also be really, really good for speeding up planet development. So, not stuff we heard today, but stuff maybe we'll find out later. Ultimately, I like the cargo refactor. It's not a huge deal. It's not going to change the game or anything like that, but it makes a big difference in terms of collecting, interacting with cargo. I'm sure it's going to add a lot to the sandbox gameplay capabilities. We'll probably do a lot of different events involving cargo now in my org. And these Rastar updates are cool because that means that points of interest are going to be even faster than they've already been this year, which is way better than we've ever seen before. So I look forward to getting a lot of interesting new locations to actually visit. Maybe not do too much, but at least find some loot at over the next year. Solid. Anyways, this was another Inside Star Citizen. I'm Space Tomato. If you don't know me, I do this kind of stuff all the time on this channel. I also do more formal, informative videos on my first channel. Go and check that out. And if you want to support all this stuff, I also do some special perks like live podcast and exclusive videos every month for people who like to support this stuff. So if you're into that, if you're into space games or Star Citizen, hopefully I'll see you again. Have a good day.